You've heard stories about vacations gone wrong, lost luggage, missed flights, maybe even a stolen wallet. But this is the kind of nightmare that rewrites the word tragedy. A 17-year-old boy, Mike, boarding a plane in Frankfurt, headphones in, a crumpled map of Malta in his backpack. His parents hugged him goodbye at the gate. His little sister made him promise to bring back seashells. 3 days later, that same boy returned to Germany in a steel-lined coffin. His body, intact but empty. Every organ, his heart, liver, kidneys, surgically removed. Vanished. No explanations. No suspects. Just a passport photo of a smiling teenager and a question that still haunts investigators. How does someone disappear from a sunlit island in the Mediterranean, only to re-emerge as a ghost story? This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't some back alley robbery. This was cold, clinical, and calculated. Mike's story starts like yours or mine. A kid chasing adventure, trusting the world to meet his curiosity with kindness. But somewhere between the postcard-perfect beaches of Malta and the echoing silence of a morgue, there's a 72-hour gap. A void, a timeline filled with whispers of human trafficking, black market organ syndicates, and a boy who walked into the light and strayed into the dark. The worst part, this isn't fiction. It's a warning, because if it could happen to Mike, a kid with no enemies, no secrets, no reason to fear, what does that say about the shadows just beyond the frame of your next vacation selfie? Who's watching? Who's waiting? And why, years later, does this case still scream one terrifying truth? Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to terrify us into paying attention. Before he became a cautionary tale, Mike was just Mike, a lanky 17-year-old with a crooked smile, perpetually hiding behind the lens of his second-hand Canon camera. His bedroom walls were plastered with photos he'd developed himself, foggy mornings at the Rhine River, his little sister Midlaff, a stray dog he'd named Captain, and fed sausages to every afternoon. He wasn't reckless, wasn't a troublemaker. His teachers called him the quiet observer, always lingering at the edges of parties, snapping candid shots that made people see themselves differently. His best friend, Lucas, still has the voicemail Mike left the night before his flight. "Dude, Malta's gonna be epic. I'll finally get that shot of the Blue Lagoon at sunrise. Pray I don't get sunburned, yeah?" Typical Mike, joking, earnest, already mentally framing the world through his viewfinder. But here's what the headlines won't tell you. Mike spent weeks preparing for this trip. He saved up birthday money for a vintage Maltese cross necklace to bring back for his mom. He taught himself 5 phrases in Maltese just to impress locals. And on his phone, a note titled Malta Shots, a checklist of every sunset, street market, and hidden alley he wanted to photograph. This wasn't some rich kid's gap year fantasy. This was a working-class teenager's hard-earned dream. His parents worked double shifts to fund the trip. His sister glued googly eyes to his luggage to scare off airport ghosts. They'd all stood in the driveway waving as his taxi pulled away, his dad yelling, "Don't forget to charge your phone." But here's the cruel twist. Mike did charge his phone. He texted his mom a blurry selfie at the Malta airport, thumbs up in front of a Welcome to Paradise sign. That photo, still pinned to her fridge, is the last time she saw his eyes alive, bright with anticipation. Because what followed wasn't an adventure. It was a vanishing act. And by the time the world learned Mike's name, he was no longer a boy with a camera. He was a riddle, wrapped in a mystery, stuffed into a coffin. A kid who trusted the world enough to explore it, only to become proof that sometimes the world doesn't deserve that trust. Malta isn't just a postcard. It's a labyrinth. Cobblestone streets twist into dead ends. Ancient forts stare down at tourists like stone sentinels. And the sea. It's not just blue, it's hypnotic. That's where Mike's story should have stayed. A sun-bleached coming-of-age tale. His first day was straight out of a travel vlog. He stayed at the Sunscape Hostel, a crumbling building with sticky floors and a rooftop view of the Mediterranean. His Instagram stories showed him grinning over a paper plate of pastizzi, flaky pastries stuffed with ricotta. He'd befriended 2 backpackers, Alicia from Canada and Marco from Italy, who later told police he seemed normal, happy, like any kid on summer break. But Malta has 2 faces. By night, the alleyways near Paceville, the island's party district, thrum with neon and bass. Locals call it the Tiger's Playground. Mike didn't go there, at least not at first. His second day started with a sunrise boat tour to the Blue Lagoon. His camera roll filled with shots of limestone cliffs and turquoise water. He texted his mom, "This place is magic. Love you," sent his sister a voice note. Found the weirdest seashell, Looks like a dinosaur tooth. Then, for 17 p.m., something shifted. His texts turned vague. Met some guys who know a secret beach. Back later. No photos. No names. When his mom asked for details, he left her on read. By 8 p.m., his location sharing cut off. His hostel mates said he never returned that night. His bed stayed empty, sheets still tucked under the mattress, his charger coiled neatly on the pillow. The last confirmed sighting? A blurry CCTV clip from a convenience store near the Valletta Ferry terminal. Mike bought a bottle of water, his camera slung over his shoulder. A man in a black baseball cap stood behind him, head lowered. The clerk didn't notice anything wrong. Just another tourist, he'd say later. But when Mike walked out, the man followed. And neither of them were ever seen again. By day 3, Mike's phone died. His family's messages piled up, 47 unread. The hostel owner found his backpack in a storage locker. Inside, a sand-covered Jurassic Park t-shirt, his sister's favorite, a dented water bottle, and a hand-carved wooden turtle he'd bought for his mom. No wallet, no passport, no camera. Just like that, Mike became a ghost in paradise. A boy swallowed whole by an island that's hosted tourists for centuries and secrets for millennia. 3 days. That's how long it took for the nightmare to solidify. 3 days of frantic calls to embassies, of Mike's father pacing the airport with a photo of his son, of his sister refreshing his Instagram every 10 seconds, hoping for a new story. 3 days of maybe. Maybe he lost his phone. Maybe he's on a boat with no signal. Maybe. Then the knock on the door. 2 German federal police officers stood in the hallway, their faces carved from stone. No one needs to tell you why they're there. You see it in their eyes, the way they can't quite look at you, the way they say, "We need you to sit down." Mike's mother collapsed before they finished the sentence. His body had been found, not in Malta, not in some shallow grave by the beach, but in the belly of a rusted cargo ship chugging toward Libya. A worker checking the containers had smelled something sour seeping through the steel. Inside, among crates of counterfeit jeans and expired canned goods, was a black body bag. Zipped shut. No identification. Just a toe tag with a number scrawled in marker. The autopsy report was written in cold, clinical German. Words no parent should ever have to read. Subject's thoracic and abdominal cavities exhibit complete organ evisceration. Surgical-grade incisions. No defensive wounds. No trace evidence. His heart, liver, kidneys, pancreas gone. Even his corneas had been carved out. All that remained was a hollowed-out shell, like a doll ripped apart by someone who wanted its stuffing. But this wasn't a doll. This was a boy who loved Star Wars and hated broccoli. A boy who'd promised his sister he'd teach her to skateboard when he got back. A boy whose last coherent text to his mother was, "Don't worry, I'm being careful." The questions came like a flood. How did he end up on a ship bound for Libya? Malta to Libya is a 350-kilometer stretch of sea crawling with coast guards and radar. How did traffickers slip a body into a container without getting caught? The police had no answers. The cargo ship's crew swore they knew nothing. The captain claimed the container had been sealed in Malta by a third-party logistics company, a shell corporation that vanished overnight. The Maltese authorities shrugged. No jurisdiction, they said. The crime didn't happen here. But where did it happen? On the ship? In a hidden operating room on the island? In the back of a van speeding toward the docks? Mike's family begged for the raw CCTV footage from the Valletta Ferry terminal, the last place he was seen alive. The video showed Mike buying water, the man in the baseball lingering behind him. But when investigators enhanced the footage, the man's face was pixelated. Unreadable, as if he'd been erased by the universe itself. Forensic teams combed through Mike's backpack, still damp with seawater. His Jurassic Park shirt, the wooden turtle, a half-melted Snickers bar, and tucked into a hidden pocket, a small velvet box. Inside was the Maltese cross necklace he'd bought for his mom. The receipt was dated the morning he disappeared. The worst part, none of it made sense. This wasn't a gangland hit, a ransom gone wrong, a crime of opportunity. This was something cleaner, professional. Someone had watched Mike, studied him, waited for the perfect moment to pluck him out of the world. And they'd done it in broad daylight, in a country safer than most of Europe. Mike's mother keeps his bedroom exactly as he left it. Camera on the desk, socks on the floor, a sticky note on the mirror that says, "Charge phone," in his messy handwriting. She wears the Maltese cross necklace every day, clutches it like a rosary when she walks past his empty seat at the dinner table. But here's what they can't escape, the silence. No arrests, No leaks, no anonymous tips, just a family stranded in the worst kind of limbo, knowing their child was butchered for parts, but not knowing who or why or how many others are out there like him. And then, 6 months after the funeral, a package arrived at their door. No return address. Inside was Mike's Canon camera. The memory card was wiped clean, but when his father pried open the battery compartment, he found a single drop of dried blood. The police tested it. It was Mike's. Someone had mailed his camera back to them. Someone who wanted them to know, we're still here. We're still watching. And that's when the real horror began. What do you do when a crime has no fingerprints? No witnesses? No trail? When even the sea seems to swallow the truth. This is where Mike's case stalled. A maze of dead ends, wild theories, and whispers in the dark. Authorities called it the most baffling case in recent memory. But for Mike's family, baffling wasn't a mystery. It was a life sentence of screaming into the void. The Maltese police moved first. They blamed human trafficking rings. These groups target solo travelers, one investigator told reporters. They promise jobs, fake modeling gigs, or cheap tours. By the time the victim realizes it's a trap, they're already in a shipping container. But there was a problem. Mike wasn't poor or desperate. He wasn't looking for work. He had a return ticket, a hostel booked, and a family waiting. Why him? German investigators disagreed. They pointed to the black market organ trade. This wasn't trafficking, argued a forensic expert. This was a harvest. His organs were removed with precision. Someone needed them, and paid to get them fresh. The math was grim. A heart can fetch 150,000 150,000 kidneys, 200,000 a pair. Corneas, liver, pancreas, add another $500,000. On the dark web, Mike's body was a gold mine. But again, questions. How did they move his organs so fast? And who was sick enough to order them? Theories exploded like wildfire. Was Mike lured by someone he trusted? A friendly backpacker? A hostel worker? His social media showed no new friends, no suspicious messages. Just photos of beaches and a half-eaten sandwich. Then came the rumors. A taxi driver reported seeing Mike arguing with a man in a blue hoodie. A street vendor claimed a nervous foreigner bought bandages and painkillers the night he vanished. But none of it led anywhere. No CCTV, no receipts, no blue hoodie. The worst part, the lack of rage. Most crimes leave a mess, a struggle, a drop of blood, a broken phone. But Mike's abduction was clean, surgical, as if he'd walked into a trap and let it happen. The coroner found no drugs in his system, no bruises, no signs he'd fought back. It was like he'd been plucked from the world by a ghost. Interpol got involved. They tracked the cargo ship's route, Malta to Libya, then Turkey, then Syria. A zigzag path through countries with shaky laws and corrupt ports. The ship's owner? A shell company registered in the Bahamas. The crew? All hired through a temp agency in Morocco. Even the body bag was untraceable, a generic brand sold in bulk online. Every lead dissolved like sugar in water. Then came the conspiracy theories. Online forums lit up with claims of organ mafias run by billionaires. A Reddit user insisted Malta was a hub for elite human hunting. Another blamed rogue surgeons, citing a rumored clinic in Tripoli that transplants organs without questions. But without proof, they were just stories. Ghosts. The family hired a private detective. He found nothing. It's like they erased him, he told Mike's father. Professionals. People who've done this before. The only clue. A shipping log showed the cargo ship had made the same route 6 times that year. Malta to Libya. Libya to Turkey. Always at night. Always with textile exports. How many other containers held bodies like Mike's? How many other families were left in the dark? The Maltese government grew defensive. Tourism is 30% of their economy. They couldn't let one tragedy scare visitors away. No evidence of crime on our soil, officials repeated. But a leaked email between diplomats hinted at pressure to soften the narrative. Meanwhile, German police quietly added Mike's case to a Europol database of suspected transnational organ trafficking. Of the 217 cases in the file, only 12 had bodies. The rest were just missing. Mike's family begged for answers. They wrote to the UN. They stormed TV studios. They even confronted the Libyan ambassador, who shrugged and said, "We have no records of this ship." But in a cruel twist, the more they pushed, the more they realized no one wanted to solve this. Not Malta, not Libya, not the cops drowning in paperwork. The world had already moved on. Then a break. In 2021, a whistleblower from a Maltese hospital came forward. He claimed that, 2 weeks before Mike's death, a private jet chartered by a Dubai-based medical tourism company landed in Malta. On board were 3 surgeons specializing in kidney transplants. The jet left the same night Mike disappeared. The company? A front for a known organ broker. But when investigators demanded flight records, they'd been lost in a server crash. To this day, nobody knows how Mike ended up on that ship. Was he sedated in a van? Dragged onto a fishing boat? Did he wake up in a cold room, strangers in scrubs looming over him? Or was it faster, a needle in the neck, then darkness? The truth is out there, buried under lies and bureaucracy and the Mediterranean's relentless waves. But for Mike's family, the truth doesn't matter anymore. They know the real horror isn't the how or the why. It's the who. Because whoever did this, they're still out there. And they're hungry. Time doesn't heal all wounds. Some fester. Some grow teeth. Years have passed since Mike's death, and yet, his story claws at the edges of our reality. Because for every answer the authorities think they have, a dozen more questions rot in the dark. Let's start with the simplest one. Why Mike? He wasn't wealthy. Wasn't connected to criminals. Wasn't even the type to wander into dangerous neighborhoods. He was a kid who took photos of stray cats and texted his mom corny jokes. So why him? Was it random? A predator lurking in the crowd, picking the easiest target? Or was there something about Mike, his age, his blood type, his genes, that made him perfect for their needs? Then there's Malta, a tiny island nation smaller than New York City. Its ports are monitored. Its borders are strict. So how did traffickers smuggle a body onto a cargo ship without a single official noticing? Were they paid to look away? Or is Malta's sun-soaked facade hiding a pipeline? A well-oiled machine that turns tourists into commodities? And the organs. Let's talk about the organs. A heart doesn't just vanish. A liver doesn't dissolve into thin air. Somewhere, someone received Mike's heart. Maybe a billionaire with a bad ticker. A politician's dying spouse. A child in a hospital, unaware their second chance at life was stolen from another. Those organs are out there right now, beating, filtering, surviving, inside strangers who'll never know the boy they came from. But here's the question that keeps investigators awake. Was Mike alone? In 2020, Europol reported 1,700 missing persons cases linked to suspected organ trafficking. Most were migrants, refugees, people the world wouldn't miss. But Mike didn't fit the profile. He was a tourist with a passport, a family, a paper trail. If they could take him, how many others have they taken? How many perfect, ordinary lives have been carved up and sold off while the world scrolls past? Let's dig deeper. The cargo ship Mike was found on, the Medusa, had a history. Before it was scrubbed from records, shipping logs showed it docked in Malta 11 times in 2 years. Always at night, always under a different flag. And every time it left, local hospitals reported an influx of donated organs from unknown sources. Coincidence? Or proof that this wasn't a crime, it was a business? Then there's the man in the baseball cap, the one from the CCTV footage. Maltese police claimed he was a tourist. German profilers argued he was too calm, too practiced to be an amateur. His posture, his timing, the way he kept his hands in his pockets, hiding his fingerprints. A witness from a nearby cafe later came forward. She said the man bought 2 coffees before following Mike. 2, as if he wasn't alone, as if someone else was waiting. And what about the camera? The one mailed back to Mike's family with his blood inside. The postmark was blurred, but forensic analysts traced the package to a mailing center in Sicily. When police searched the facility, workers recalled a man in a surgical mask dropping it off. He paid in cash. He didn't speak. He left. That's it. No car. No accent. No face. Just another ghost. Mike's case isn't unique. In 2022, a French backpacker vanished in Cyprus. Her body washed up in Egypt 3 weeks later. Organs missing. Incisions identical to Mike's. No arrests. In 2023, a Canadian student disappeared from a Greek hostel. His phone last pinged near a private clinic in Ankara. The clinic had no record of him, but a janitor told reporters he'd seen foreign doctors arriving that night with coolers labeled biohazard. The pattern is there. Mediterranean hotspots, solo travelers, surgical precision, bodies found just far enough away to muddy jurisdiction. It's a system, a supply chain, and Mike was just inventory. But the loudest question isn't about the past. It's about the future. Who's next? Is it a girl hiking alone in Crete? A gap-year student in Naples? A retiree snapping photos in Tunis? The operation, if it exists, is still out there. Refined, ruthless, invisible, and it preys on the one thing we all share: trust. Trust that a stranger will give us directions. Trust that a crowded street is safe. Trust that the world isn't as monstrous as it seems. For Mike's family, the questions are a prison. His mother still sets a plate for him at Christmas. His sister leaves comments on his Instagram, begging him to come home. His father sits in the garage, staring at the skateboard he never got to teach him to ride. They don't talk about the why anymore. They talk about the who. Who did this? Faces without names. Shadows without shapes. The truth is, we'll probably never know. Some crimes aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to terrify. To remind us that for every paradise, there's a predator. For every missing poster, there's a ledger somewhere with a price next to a name. Mike's story isn't a mystery. It's a warning. And if you listen close, you can hear the whispers of the next victim, right now, somewhere, planning their dream vacation. We tell ourselves stories to feel safe. Crime happens to other people. I'd never be that naive. Monsters only lurk in dark alleys. But Mike's tragedy isn't a true crime episode. It's a crack in the glass, a glimpse into the truth we don't want to see. Evil doesn't always snarl. Sometimes it's polite, charming. It speaks perfect English and offers to take your photo so you can both be in the shot. It recommends a restaurant, shares a cigarette, laughs at your jokes. It knows how to make you trust it. This isn't about fear-mongering. It's about waking up. Mike's story forces us to stare down an ugly reality. The world is full of people who see you, your body, your organs, your life, as a transaction. A paycheck, a spare part, and they don't hide in shadows. They work in daylight. They blend in. They're the woman who helps you find your lost wallet, the man who carries your luggage to the train, the couple who invites you to a beach party. So what do? Stop traveling? Lock ourselves indoors? No, but we adapt. We learn from Mike. Trust your gut when a good Samaritan feels off. Share your location with someone who'll notice if you go silent. Scan your surroundings like your life depends on it, because sometimes it does. And if someone seems too eager, too convenient, too perfect, run. But here's the part no one wants to say out loud. None of this might matter. Mike was careful. He texted his mom every hour. He stayed in crowded areas. He avoided nightclubs and sketchy deals. And still he vanished. Because the truth is, we're all just one wrong turn, one split-second decision away from becoming a headline. A statistic. A cold case. That's the true horror of Mike's story. It wasn't his fault. He did everything right. But the monsters were better. Faster. Smarter. They've turned human suffering into an industry, and business is booming. Every year, 10,000 people vanish in Europe alone. Most are never found. Some, like Mike, come back in pieces. His family knows this better than anyone. They've become accidental activists, fighting to change laws, demanding stricter port security, begging tourists to check twice, trust once. But grief has a way of hollowing you out. Mike's mother still can't walk past a skateboard shop. His sister flinches at the sound of fairy horns. And his father? He spends weekends hiking the trails Mike loved, shouting his son's name into the wind, hoping, praying, the mountains echo back. So here's the warning etched in Mike's empty coffin. The world is beautiful, but beauty is a distraction, a magic trick. For every sunset that takes your breath away, there's a predator counting your breaths. For every hidden gem you discover, there's a hole in the ground waiting to bury your story. This isn't paranoia, it's survival. Share your location, memorize emergency numbers. Tell strangers you're meeting a friend in 5 minutes. And when you see a solo traveler, be the person Mike needed. Offer help, but don't insist. Watch. Listen, care. Mike's organs may be gone, but his voice isn't. It's here, in the silence between these words. In the chill on the back of your neck when someone walks too close. In the texts you'll send tonight just to say, I'm safe. So go, see the world. Swim in its oceans, climb its ruins, taste its magic. But pack your courage alongside your passport. And remember, the scariest monsters don't live under your bed. They stand beside you on the train. They wave from across the street. They smile, and they're very good at their job. In memory of Mike and the thousands who vanish without a trace. Stay vigilant. Stay alive.